Muchas gracias, Miguel. Buenos días, señores and señoritas. Buenos dias, amigos. It's truly wonderful to be back here in Salamanca. As you know, Salamanca is Sue and my second city, and it's also the place where our second family lives. Over the years, we've been able to establish such wonderful relationships with many of you in this audience. And indeed, on behalf of Sue and myself, we always want to say thank you for your graciousness, your hospitality, your love, your affection, and in this case, your help in getting suitcases here after 5 days of being here. So people that have seen me on the first 4 days of the trip didn't recognize me this morning because I had a different outfit on. And let me tell you, it's interesting to live in the same clothes for 6 days. I've never had that experience, and it's okay. It's okay. You do what you have to do, right? You know, as I talk with many of you here and have over the years, I'm always impressed with all the similarities that we have. You know, we are so similar in terms of attitude and philosophy and morals and commitment to the individuals that we serve. That is, people with intellectual and closely related developmental disabilities. But today I want us to think a bit about what is it that we have in common. And I would suggest, in preparation for my slides, which, by the way, I do have some notes, but I never use them. I would like to have us think about the three things that all of us have in common, regardless of who we are, where we come from, how young we are, or how old we are. One thing that we have in common is that each of us is aging. And that aging process, I guess, begins at birth, and it continues, and it's common to everyone. And as one ages, certain changes occur. And that's true of you, it's true of me, it's true of people with intellectual disability. So I don't think that we have to think about people with intellectual disability who are aging in any way that's different from the way you and I think about our own aging process. Because indeed, aging is a common phenomenon. But there's a second thing that we have in common, and that is that each of us in this room wants a life of quality. We want to live in an environment in which there is quality to what we do, to the individuals with whom we associate, and to what we'll call the 8 domains of a life of quality. And as we'll see later in my presentation, the concept of quality of life and the desire for a life of quality is universal. And it's the same with individuals of age. They want the same sort of life of quality that you and I have. Now, as they age, as you and I age, there are additional supports that are necessary for that to occur and to occur successfully. But we all have in common that desire for a life of quality. But we also have a third thing in common, and that is that we all need supports. We need supports to do various things in various parts of our life. When you're young, you need supports in dressing and care and self-help, etc. But as you age, you also need additional supports. And so we don't have to create a new world or a new field or a new way of thinking, in my mind, about talking about individuals with intellectual disability who are aging. Because the process that they are going through is, in a very real sense, the process that all of us are going through. And so what I want us to think about today is, what do we have in common with people of age who also have intellectual disability. But I would suggest to you that they too have the same kind of desires, and we heard that in the very excellent roundtable discussion. They have the same desires and hopes and dreams and goals that you and I have. The reality is they need additional supports. They need what we call exceptional supports. So what I will present to you is really a very simple idea. And that idea is, let's take what we know about these two fundamental concepts. The concept of quality of life that is universal, the concept of the supports paradigm, which is the paradigm of current service delivery, and let's put those two together, but bring them together in a person-centered approach so that we focus not on the individual's age, not on the individual's disability, but we focus upon what are the support needs of that person to live the highest quality of life possible. So that's a pretty simple message. And maybe I should sit down at this point, but I won't. But the message that I want you to leave with today, if you would please, is don't make this more complex than it need be. In no way do I want to minimize the significant support needs that people with intellectual disability who are aging have. They have tremendous support needs. We heard about the loneliness issue, for example. We heard about how community inclusion and volunteerism and productivity is such a key part of their life. Well, it's also a part of our life. Think about what you heard in the roundtable about the use of technology to enhance the access that people have to their environment. And so let's try to keep it simple. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask us, next one. Yeah. I'm going to ask us to think about really 5 questions in the next 40 minutes. Question number 1 is, what are the domains of a life equality? Now, my bet is that most of you know those domains, but for those of you who may not, we'll review those briefly. Secondly, what are the support needs of individuals who are aging, who have intellectual disability? And I would suggest to you that in a very real sense, their support needs may be more intensive in some respects, but qualitatively they are not different than the support needs of anyone who ages. The third question I'd like to have us think about is, what are the support strategies that enhance the domains associated with a life equality? And Miguel will go into that concept in great detail because that's the focus of his presentation. But there's a fourth question that I think is very important, and that is, what is successful aging? Now, we saw on one of the slides this morning the concept of aging in place. And I think that's a key idea. But that's where one does it. What I want to focus on is, what is successful aging in a more general sense, regardless of where you are. So even though sometimes successful aging is equated to aging in place, I'm going to separate those two concepts out and suggest to you that we think about what is it that allows any of us to age successfully. That is, to the fullest of our capability. And then finally, I would like to have us think a bit about how can we use the concept of quality of life and the supports paradigm, or what I'll call a system of supports, to create value to persons of age through innovation. There are 2 words there that I'd like to have you think a bit about. One is value. And what does it mean to have value as a person of age? And secondly, we need to think about, how can we be innovative? How can we be creative to make that happen? So with that then, let's talk briefly about the concept of quality of life. I think you all know that quality of life is multidimensional. You know, for example, as you'll see, that the dimensions of quality of life that we've worked on and many people have worked on internationally over the years are the 8 that you know about. The point that I think is important to remember is that these domains are universal domains. They truly apply to all people, including people of age. As one ages and as one talks to people of age, there's no one at that age that does not want to continue to develop and learn new skills. There's no one at that age who does not want to have self-determination. There's no one of that age who does not want to be socially included and have social relationships. And certainly, there's no one that wants their rights denied. They want to feel happy. They want to feel content. They want to feel optimistic. They do not want to feel lonely. They want to have some sense of material well-being. And we heard so eloquently this morning about the role that volunteering and community activities and community opportunities have in a sense of material well-being and the owning of possessions. But they also want to feel good. And all too often, I think, the focus of people of age and services to people of age focuses on only their physical health. And that's critical. But the point that I will continually make is that we need to be holistic. We need to think truly about the whole person, not just the aches and the pains and the stiff joints, etc. We need to truly think about the whole person. But what's not on that slide is something that I really think is important as we consider the theme of this conference. And that is, think about the principles that underlie the quality of life concept. And think about how applicable those principles are. Inclusion, equity, self-determination, and empowerment. It's kind of interesting that your law that is referred to as the dependency law should really be the independency law, because its full title is the Law of Promotion of Personal Autonomy. And that's a much better title, frankly. Because the focus of that law, as I understand it, is to really encourage and promote and enhance the empowerment of people and the autonomy of people. And that's a fundamental principle in the quality of life concept, which goes back to my earlier suggestion that you've got the model. You've got the quality of life model to work with people of age. You've got the supports paradigm to work with people of age. Put those two together, and I think you will bring together the two fields that we heard about this morning. So let's look next at the quality of life domains and exemplary indicators. And again, I think you're familiar with these, but put yourself in the position of an individual who is elderly or aging. Now, my understanding is that you draw the line here in Spain at 45 in terms of people with intellectual disability who are aging. And that's probably okay. Some places use 50, some places use 55. But I don't know how you feel or felt at 45, but I never viewed myself as a person of age at 45. So why do we draw a line that says, this is just a question. Why do we draw a line that says that if a person with intellectual disability is 45 years of age or older, they're elderly? That line was not drawn for you, and I certainly guarantee you, it was not drawn for me. I was 45, 39, 34 years ago. All right. So consequently, I think we sometimes sort of put ourselves into a trap and pigeonhole people prematurely. Now, there's no question that as you look at individuals with Downs, for example, the aging process does begin earlier. The average age of people in the world today is 70.1 years of age. The average age of people with intellectual disability is about 54.2, I think, years of age. But you know what that average age was 10 years ago? It was not 54.1. It was like 37.8. So consequently, think about the future. That indeed, maybe 45 will be too soon to draw that line. But in any event, as you look at those 8 domains, put yourself in the position of a person of age and ask yourself, is there not one of those domains that's not essential in your life? And I think the answer is yes, that there are each of those domains is absolutely relevant to you, to me, to individuals with intellectual disability, and to people with intellectual disability who are aging. Now, the next question, or rather before thinking about the support needs of people, let me give you, in the next slide, a framework that you might think about using in reference to dealing with people of age in your respective programs. I don't know how you'd establish your individual program plan, what format you use, but my bet would be, and I would encourage you to look at an ISP or an individual support plan for a person of age and take a look at what is the emphasis of that plan. And I would bet you a very nice bottle of Spanish red wine. The major focus, or white, whichever you prefer. I would guarantee you the major focus of that ISP is on the health of the individual. And that's not inappropriate, but it should not be the only focus. So if you think about what you see in front of you as a framework to formulate how you might in the future develop a support plan for a person of age, think about building it around the quality of life framework. The quality of life framework is a beautiful framework to use for support plans. What you have, obviously, is for each of the domains, you think about, well, what are, or determine, what are the typical support needs of that individual? Remember my earlier comment, quality of life supports person-centered. So what are the support needs in terms of the individual's personal goals and the more typical support needs? And then secondly, but in a aligned fashion, then you develop support strategies. And we'll look at a number of support strategies that are available and appropriate to people of age. So in order to really make a change in the supports that people of age receive, I think you should consider seriously what format do you use to develop your support plan. Because ultimately, the vehicle or the mechanism that brings about change in people receiving supports and services is that support plan. And as I've mentioned to a group of students yesterday, a wonderful group of students, by the way, it should be a personal support plan that focuses upon what is important to the person as well as what is important for the person. I think the evidence is very clear that when you analyze support plans for people of age, is what is important for the person. And I think if you were in that position, if I were in that position, the emphasis would be, yes, there are things that I need, but there are also things that I want. And if we forget that distinction between important to and important for. If we forget that distinction, then I think we are not doing the job that we should be doing. So after thinking about that format, then let's look briefly at what are the support needs of aging individuals with ID. Next. What I've done here is simply suggest a way of thinking about the support needs of people of age with ID or anyone else. And these are the major life activities that are assessed in an instrument that many of you are familiar with. It's called the Support Intensity Scale. And what it allows you to do is to look at what are the support needs of individuals in reference to home living. So if an individual wants to age in place and stay within their home, then what are the support needs that are necessary there? And one of the nice things that the support intensity scale does for you is that it really allows you to objectively determine what are their support needs in that area. Secondly, what are their support needs in terms of community living and community participation and activities? It may be transportation, it may be modified vehicles, it may be access ramps, it may be a co-worker, whatever. What are the support needs of that individual? Health and safety is one that is a critical one. And my bet is that most programs do a pretty good job looking at the support needs of people in terms of health and safety. But don't ever forget the importance of lifelong learning. One of my favorite observations is I was in a group home for people of age with ID not too awfully long ago, and there was this one gentleman that I swear to God was 95 years of age. I mean, he was unbelievably, probably 65, but anyway, he had an iPhone. He had an iPhone, and guess what he was doing? He was watching and listening to a baseball game, which is big in the U.S., soccer here, baseball there. But he was sitting and using his iPhone to enjoy a baseball game. Another man in the same place was using an iPhone he used an iPad to do crossword puzzles. Another one was using it to check out Wikipedia, to find out a fact about something or other. So the net result is we sometimes think, especially when we draw lines, we sometimes think that learning does no longer take place at a certain age. And I would encourage us to rethink that assumption, that learning is a lifelong process, and it should not be overlooked as one ages. Granted, it may not be formal academia, but it would be access to news, to weather, to sports, to whatever else is on in terms of social media. Give them the opportunity to access that world that's out there. We heard a lot this morning about the importance of social interactions. And so what support needs do people of age with intellectual disability have in reference to participating and recreating and being a part of their communities? And finally, what are the support needs for protection and advocacy? We have a big problem in the U.S. in terms of the lack of protection and the abuse that sometimes takes place in nursing homes and in places where elderly people live. Frequently, they're over-chemical. That is, they're drugged up or they're tied up. And that is absolutely barbaric. So there must be a way to provide better protection and advocacy. And we heard a bit about that from the Federation this morning. So what then, and our next question is, well, what are the elements of support? Here are some facts that I think might surprise you. Most people, including individuals of age with intellectual disability, are supported by family members. In the United States, for example, only about 1 in 4 individuals with intellectual disability is in a formal program. Now, what that means is that the vast majority of supports that people receive are not provided by professionals, nor are they provided by service or support agencies. They're provided by neighbors, by friends, by family members. And so consequently, as we think about providing supports to individuals of age with intellectual disabilities, think about the list that you see in front of you. Now, there is a description of each of these that's available online through ANICO. This presentation that I'm making this morning, the written form of it, is available online through ANICO. So if you want more detail, there's tables there that give you all these support systems. But think about the natural supports, the neighbors, the friends, the colleagues, the co-workers. Think about the whole role that technology plays in your life and mine. And can we use that technology for people with intellectual disabilities who are aging or who are not aging? And I'm seeing more of that, by the way, in programs throughout the world. I'm seeing more and more technology finally being used for the service or support recipient. Think about prosthetics, the sensory, the motor assistance devices. And I think you do a good job on that. You know, we've done a lot on prosthetics, but have we done enough in terms of vision and hearing? My understanding is that there are a very high percentage of individuals with intellectual disability who have never had an eye exam and never had an ear exam. And unfortunately, sometimes they've never had a dental exam. So think about prosthetics as a support. Think about education through the lifespan, as I mentioned earlier. Think about reasonable accommodation. You know, if there's anything that people of age need, is accommodation. So often we try to fit a person to the environment, right? That's not the way to think about it. We should fit the environment to the person. And that's what environmental accommodation is all about. You know, and again, your society and my society has done a pretty good job in environmental accommodation. There are a lot of ramps, there are a lot of buttons, et cetera, that have been accommodated to the various needs of individuals. Can we do more? Can we look at environmental accommodation within the home, for example, and look at what kind of a chair does the person sit in? How high are the counters or tables that the person is eating from? Are there stairs that the person cannot emulate easily? Are there barriers in that environment that indeed can be reduced that will allow that person to successfully age in place? Never overlook the role that dignity and respect plays as a support. Think about your own self-concept, for example, for just a moment. Think about yourself. It's okay. What do you think about yourself? Are you capable or incapable? Are you friendly or not friendly? Are you good or are you bad? And the positive self-concept that each of you has, and it is positive, is based upon the dignity and the respect that has been shown to you throughout your life. Put yourself now then into the position of the individual with intellectual disability. To what degree have they experienced dignity and respect? And to the degree that that dignity and respect has resulted in a positive self-concept, to that degree, the individual is going to be more motivated, is going to think more highly of themselves, and is going to view themselves as more capable. So dignity and respect is a tremendous source of support in all of our lives. We all too often overlook another major source of support, and that is building on the person's strengths and assets. And consequently, we look at their deficits much more than we look at and emphasize what potential do they have, what capability do they have, what are their personal assets and strengths. Now, the list that I've just gone through are called generic supports. These are the supports and the support strategies that we use for support staff to provide active support within the environment, These are the supports that families can use to enhance their family members' quality of life. And these are the supports that we can use to really communicate to the community that they too can be part of that process. Now, in addition to that, we obviously have a whole litany, a whole list, as it were, of professional supports. And those, I think, are pretty straightforward. So when you think about a system of supports, think about not just providing a given service to an individual, but to provide a wraparound support network for that individual. Next, then, let's talk very briefly about the concept of successful aging and its application. And again, I do want to make that distinction between aging in place as opposed to successful aging. Successful aging really is sort of a two-pronged process. It's really on one prong or one aspect to optimize or maximize human capacities and to really develop as much as possible the capability that that person has. It may be limited, but nevertheless, never assume that the capability is not there. But the other prong or aspect of successful aging is to really maximize opportunities for people, to maximize opportunities for growth and development and social inclusion, to maximize the 8 domains and the strategies that might be used, as I indicated earlier, to indeed maximize those 8 domains. And as you can read, successful aging really does require a holistic approach to the person. We will never get to where we want to go if we focus only on the aging process and the effects of that aging process. If we only deal with the symptoms of aging, we will never reverse the symptoms of aging. And that's the reason why that holistic approach is so important, where we look at the whole person. And when we look at the whole person, why don't we look at the person from a quality of life perspective? That's a pretty holistic approach. And then in terms of maximizing that individual, let's think about the supports that we provide to make that happen. Next, and next to last, let's think a bit about how do you create value to persons of age through innovation. My assumption is, and I'm by nature, I'm optimistic. My assumption is that we have the technique, the technology, the strategies to really do a better job at aging in place as well as successful aging. And what I'd like to suggest for you, and again, in the written paper, which is available online, there are lots of examples of each of these, but I'll just give you the highlights. Smart technology and smart homes is a characteristic of good programs in today's world. Smart technology basically is an IT-based phenomenon. It talks about control and interface devices. It does things for individuals from a technological perspective that they may not be able to do themselves. They can control heat, lights, presence, cooking, etc. You all know about smart technology. Just look at how you use your iPhone in terms of ordering things and changing things, etc. Secondly, we have to remember that the vast majority of supports are provided by the family. And I was very impressed in the first presentation this morning about the family being a part of one of your diagrams. And that's so critical, because remember, the family is the major provider of supports. Now, there are all kinds of exceptions, I understand that, but by and large, if you look at the whole picture, we have to think about the family. Now, three things about the family that I think is very important. Point number one about the family is we may have to deal with the family's mindset. For those of you who may have a family member with a disability, you have developed a mindset about that individual and about the individual's capabilities. And indeed, I think that as people age, that mindset gets stronger. And that mindset may be something like, Charlie can't learn, he's a problem, and on it goes. I think it's important for families to believe in potential, to believe in capability, to believe that things can be different. That's the mindset. But secondly, families need to understand the elements of a system of supports, because families have tried over the years to do certain things, but to the degree that they have information about relevant supports and how to do them, then they're limited. And I think we need to do everything we can to give families the ammunition, as it were, to help the successful aging process. And then third, I think it's essential to, as much as possible, include the family in the support process. Now, I know there are a lot of challenges there, and I would not minimize those challenges, but family members must be a part of the support process. But if we all are working on the same support strategies, then I think that increases the opportunities and the probability that success is going to occur. We heard in the third presentation this morning a wonderful, wonderful discussion of social support networks and how important those social support networks are to you and to me. If I were, for example, to analyze how you use your iPhone, iPad, or any other device, I would estimate that 95% of that is social. It's to communicate. That's why we call it social media, right? And so consequently, the example of the telephone calling in when you're lonely, can we develop circles of support for people? Can we indeed access organizations within the community that are providing support for people, church groups, social groups, etc.? We need to remember that people of age with intellectual disability are still social beings. They still want to interact with people. They don't want to be alone. They want to be with individuals. And we need to focus on that social support system and be creative in how we use that system. And then finally, I think it's really important that we think about focusing on what's important to the individual as well as what is important for the individual. Because as long as we focus on what's important to and receive supports that facilitate that, then we indeed are going to feel better about ourselves. We're going to enhance our personal well-being. If we receive supports that are important for us, then indeed we are going to be healthier and we're going to be more safe. But we should always remember, important to is not the same as important for. Finally, then, I think we have some challenges. And I've got 2 minutes to talk about challenges, all right? I can do it. Number one, individuals with intellectual disabilities are living longer. And I explained that earlier. Too frequently, and I think we heard this morning, they're living in environments that really aren't very good in terms of successful aging and quality of life. So I think we need to think about, what is our commitment? What is our commitment to really changing the quality of life of people with intellectual disabilities who are aging? And I would suggest that that commitment is based upon the 3 factors that you see in this slide. Number one, how much importance do we give to the concept of quality of life? Do we talk the talk, or do we walk the walk? It's easy to talk about, but it's hard to do. And to what degree are we really willing to do the hard work that's necessary to do what we say quality of life is all about? Secondly, I think the degree of our success is dependent upon how good our support system is. I'm delighted that Plein Air Inclusion is working on truly a supports network, supports paradigm, training individuals in active supports. That is so promising, because that is going to increase the effectiveness of the efforts that we do. And finally, I think the ultimate test of our commitment is the degree to which organizations and individuals create value to persons of age. Persons of age are all too often devalued. And somehow we have to change that mindset, to realize, as we have done with individuals with intellectual disability, that they have value. We have to think the same thing about people of age with intellectual disability. They too have value. And I think our real challenge is to not just recognize that they do have value, but to do everything in our power to make them feel that they have value. Muchas gracias.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Al igual que antes, podemos aprovechar algún momento para preguntas. Si da alguien la luz para que este interrogatorio al que nos someten a los de la mesa sea más liviano, por favor. Gracias. Bien, cualquier pregunta yo la repito desde aquí y Bob la responde también desde aquí. No, bien. A ver, que levante la mano a alguien. ¿Dónde estás? No veo. Aquí. Sí, gracias. Sí, hacer las preguntas sintéticas para que luego yo pueda resumirlas bien.
Vale, enhorabuena a vos, me ha encantado tu presentación. Estoy totalmente de acuerdo con el punto de corte, 45 años es pronto, es temprano. Quería, pero a veces intentamos como poner una llegada para poner el foco en la prevención y en la aplicación de metodologías. Yo pregunto, ¿cuál te parece a ti debe ser la edad de corte, no? O si debe ser diferente, personas con síndrome de Down y categorías de apoyo, y las que no tienen síndrome de Down por ese motivo de corte. Gracias.
Bien, gracias. Repito la pregunta y se la traduzco también luego porque veo que no tiene el aparato. Lo que ha preguntado ha sido relativo al, como Bob Schalock ha hablado de los 45 años como un poco temprano, un punto de corte del envejecimiento, que cuál cree que es el adecuado y que si debe ser diferente según su grupo en el mundo de la discapacidad intelectual. En Down, por ejemplo, está comprobado que hay más investigación que parece que afecta previamente, ¿no? Le voy a traducir y él contesta. The question is that she was asking about the moment that you consider aging is started, because you said that 45 is too early. She also asked if different subgroups like Down syndrome or cerebral palsy should have different cut-off limits. Okay? Okay? Yeah.
The point that I was trying to make. Are you going to translate?
Yeah, it's okay. No, it's okay. They are translating.
Oh, that's right. Thanks, Javier. By the way, I want to thank my translator, Javier. He and I have worked together for how many years? 20, 25 maybe? And he is superb, absolutely superb. So you're in good hands. The point that I was trying to make, and I didn't want to be critical of 45. The point that I wanted to make, and the point that I think I did make, is aging occurs at different rates in different people. And that's also true of different diagnostic groups. And so to just arbitrarily say that if you're a person with intellectual disability, at 45 you're considered aging. Now, maybe you have to do that in terms of legislation, policies, and that. And I can understand that in terms of legislation. But I don't think we want to think that way. Because take yourself, for example, you're aging. Now, at what point do you become aged? Some of you are going to get older faster. And you all know people who look very young for their age, and you all know people who look very old for their age. You all know people who act very young, and you know people who were born old. So the point that I wanted to make was you may have to legislatively define aging, and I understand that. But I don't think that means we have to think that way. Because if we think that way, we may make a person old before they really are old. Okay, good question, thank you.
¿Más preguntas o comentarios? De levantar el pie y la mano. O críticas, admite todo. La exposición de las barreras que hay, pues.
Well, if you won't ask a question, I'll ask a question.
Él hace la pregunta.
I'm looking at two individuals whom I've known for a lot of years who were students of McWell, both of whom are running wonderful organizations. I'm going to ask either Juan or Pedro or both to ask a question.
Ay, vale. Gracias.
Yo vengo del campo del envejecimiento y me dedico a cuestiones de psicométricos. Trabajo en el campo de la soledad y de la discapacidad. Y tengo una curiosidad. Ese modelo que surgió en el campo de la discapacidad, supongo que lo habrán probado en distintos grupos de población, distintas edades y distintas necesidades. Lo que yo me estaba preguntando viendo las 8 dimensiones es cómo creen que va a funcionar si lo saben o no. Perfecto. Cuando este modelo se aplique al campo de la población mayor, donde el grupo es tan heterogéneo, donde hay gente con discapacidad, de distintos tipos y gente sin discapacidad, ¿creen que el modelo se va a comportar adecuadamente bien? Sé que puede ser una pregunta de personal porque quizás se cuestione cuáles pueden ser las realidades de su propio modelo. Pero me gustaría que me dijeran qué opinión respecto a ello.
Sí. Aquí arriba, aparte del foco interrogatorio, hay un retorno a veces que tiene que hacer esfuerzos para entender bien. La pregunta que ha hecho, en resumen, lo principal es que si cree Bob que puede funcionar bien el modelo y la teoría de calidad de vida en población tan heterogénea, con y sin discapacidad, como una población de envejecimiento. Y comentaba que previamente que suponía que habíamos probado, digamos, la validez de la teoría y del modelo en diferentes edades y subgrupos. Pero la cuestión es si creemos que puede servir o no para ese colectivo, porque viene del mundo del envejecimiento, el que ha hecho la pregunta.
The person who asked the question is coming from the agency. He's working with aged people, no disability, but the main question is if you feel that the quality of life theory and model is useful for aging people, knowing that it's an heterogeneous group with people with and without disabilities. As if we have doing any kind of validation with different ages, if we have done any validation of the model with different ages. No, he's asking if the model is valid for the heterogeneous group of aged persons.
That's an excellent question because I think it really gets to the heart of the quality of life concept. My belief and my observation have been that the quality of life model is applicable, is useful to use across ages and across disability groups. Now, it may be that for any given diagnostic group or for any given age, the support strategies may change, The personal goals may change, but the domains remain the same. And so I would encourage you, if you've not applied that model to people of age, try it and see if it works. And I think you will be very positive in the results, or see positive results. It is a universal desire for people to have a life of quality. And we've never said that those domains encompass everything that's in life. But those 8 domains do encompass the vast majority of things that you and I find important. So yes, the model does generalize across ages, diagnostic groups, and countries.
Gracias. Una última pregunta para ir cumpliendo los tiempos. Última pregunta, comentario, crítica, lo que veáis oportuno. Por ahí, venga, gracias.
Hola, buenas tardes. Vengo de Chile y en relación a la reflexión sobre hacer sentir a la persona que tiene valor, me surge la reflexión respecto al rol ciudadano, a la formación de derechos de las propias personas en situación de discapacidad, de modo de favorecer y sentirse también responsables de su propio proceso.
¿Cuál es la
Una pregunta, una reflexión.
Claro, no es ninguna pregunta, ¿verdad? Es verdad que el mundo de lo que decir, como ha evolucionado, luego lo veremos un poco en la presentación de Patricia y mía, las palabras clave como han evolucionado en el mundo han sido inclusión y derechos últimamente, ¿no? Y ejercicio de derechos y oportunidades para ejercer los derechos. Y eso vale igual para ancianos que para discapacidad, que para salud mental, que para enfermos en los hospitales. Vale en todos los ámbitos que dan buenas oportunidades. Voy a traducir algo. Lo último, pero ¿queréis alguien hacer una última pregunta? Aquí abajo. Aquí había levantado.
It was only a reflection about the rights and citizens. It wasn't sensitive. I answer.
Buenos días.
Luego la última aquí ya no hay más, ¿vale?
La mía también, no sé si pregunta o reflexión.
Vale, se admite todo.
De personas con discapacidad, con un envejecimiento normal, es realmente un éxito biológico, porque muchas veces da muchos problemas en la sociedad, porque necesita muchos apoyos y tal. Y muchas veces todos esos apoyos y esas necesidades que tienen recaen sobre la familia. Por ejemplo, aquí en España. Y yo trabajo en un centro con discapacidades psíquicas y realmente las personas que viven allí ya son ancianas realmente. Ya van evolucionando y están siendo ancianas. Nos planteamos a veces si se trasladaría mejor a una residencia de esta edad o seguimos trabajando en ellos. Yo soy terapeuta ocupacional y siempre hemos trabajado de una forma holística con la persona, que es realmente como de forma integral, como la persona es más, el tratamiento es más completo y más de mejor calidad de vida.
Bueno, luego lo veremos, pero la decisión siempre es individual, ¿eh? Al final el envejecimiento es individual, la decisión que deben tomar los equipos, la familia, la persona, siempre es individual. La investigación dice eso, no es clara. A pesar de que hablemos de alternativas generales, mejor envejecer bien en el hogar, mejor hacer un entorno, digamos, familiar, al final, dependiendo del grado de dependencia, problemas, alteración del medio inmediato, tienes que tomar decisiones individuales. La última palabra la tengo aquí delante.
Esa reflexión, es nota puesta.
Sí, no es una pregunta, sino una acotación. Me dio la impresión de que Robert quería dedicar algo a la audiencia y no querría repetir la pregunta.
Antonio says that he thought that you were going to ask something to the audience, and he wants to listen what you want to ask to the audience. He thinks that you said that you were going to ask something to the people, no? And what did you?
Antonio, thank you. What I was doing was what speakers typically do. If you don't get a question from the audience, you ask somebody in the audience to ask a question. Just to get questions going. And so that's why I asked Juan and Pedro if they'd ask a question, so that we wouldn't just sit here doing nothing.
Bueno, muchas gracias.
But Antonio, I would ask the audience a very simple question. Why are you here? Well, it's a free conference.
Okay.
But more importantly, what are you going to take away from this conference? That would be the question I'd ask this audience.
That's the last.
Because if you don't take something away that's going to significantly change the way you approach individuals with intellectual disability who are aging, if you do not take something away, then you may have had a good time, but it's been a waste of time. And please, don't waste time.
Okay, it's okay. Thank you.